Today a workspace owner can cancel an invitation that has not been used. Issuance now returns a non-secret invitation identifier alongside the one-time code and expiry. The owner sends only that identifier to an owner-protected delete endpoint. The server derives the selected workspace, rechecks current owner authority, finds the exact invitation inside that tenant, and closes it while preserving the audit row. It never retrieves or returns the raw code. Once cancellation commits, the recipient can still possess the old code, but acceptance receives the same generic bad request as any unusable invitation and creates no membership. Ordinary members receive forbidden. Repeating the delete is harmless. The complete slice gives an owner a revocation action without turning the acceptance secret into an administration credential. The smallest useful mental model separates selection from authority. Invitation ID tells the owner endpoint which row to manage. It may be shown in an administration response because knowing it grants nothing by itself. The tenant-owner policy and live database relationship provide authority. The invitation code has the opposite job. It is a bearer capability bound to the recipient address, so possession matters and the server stores only its hash. The lifecycle has one open state and terminal outcomes. An open invitation may be accepted, cancelled, or later closed after expiry. Accepted and cancelled are mutually exclusive because both close the same versioned row. This separation keeps the cancellation route free of secrets and makes the API easier to reason about. Identifiers locate resources, policies authorize administrators, capabilities authorize recipients. Cancellation needs a stable target, so the issued result gains ID and the created response includes it. The identifier already exists as the entity key. Exposing it does not expose code hash and does not bypass authorization. The teaching API still returns the raw code once with no store because delivery infrastructure is outside this slice. A production delivery service would retain the identifier for administration and deliver the code without showing it again. Using the recipient address as the cancellation target looks smaller, but it is ambiguous over time. An expired invitation can be replaced for the same address, so a delayed cancellation by email could close the newer capability instead of the one the owner intended. The identifier pins the command to one lifecycle row while tenant scope still comes only from trusted server state. The HTTP surface is deliberately narrow. Delete API/tenant invitation/invitation identifier. There is no JSON body and therefore nowhere for a caller to forge a tenant, recipient, issuer, role expiry or raw code. The root uses the existing tenant-owner policy, so anonymous callers receive unauthorized and ordinary members or stale owners receive forbidden before cancellation succeeds. Inside the handler, the user identifier, one security stamp claim and membership version are parsed exactly as they were for issuance. iTenant context supplies the selected workspace. The handler passes those trusted coordinates plus the candidate invitation identifier to the store. A valid GID is only a locator, the request still cannot choose its tenant boundary. This keeps transport concerns thin and leaves the atomic authority and state decision in one persistence operation. The store starts a serializable transaction and repeats the current owner query used by issuance, same user, selected tenant, active membership, owner role, matching membership version, matching selected tenant and live identity security stamp. This closes the gap between endpoint authorization and the right for the companion single database. Only then does it query the invitation with both invitation ID and tenant ID. That composite predicate is the multi-tenant boundary. Loading by identifier first and checking the tenant later creates an easy insecure direct object reference mistake when a future return path or mutation is added. A missing identifier, an identifier from another tenant, and an already closed row all become one unavailable result. The store never looks up the invitation by code hash and never materializes a raw code because no raw code exists in persistence. Cancellation does not delete the invitation. It calls the existing close method, which advances version and records closed at. EFCore maps version as a concurrency token, so the generated update includes the version that was read. Acceptance uses the same entity and advances the same token when it calls accept. If cancellation commits first, acceptance finds a closed row or loses its versioned update and creates no membership. If acceptance commits first in a true race, cancellation loses and must not erase accepted at or accepted by user ID. A second cancellation behaves the same way. The store catches DB update concurrency exception and translates it to unavailable rather than surfacing a 500 response. Optimistic concurrency turns two competing read-modify-write paths into one terminal transition without a new table or distributed lock. The endpoint maps both cancelled and unavailable to no content. That makes delete idempotent. Retries after a lost response do not become errors, and two owner requests can safely converge on the same closed row. It also avoids turning the endpoint into an existence oracle. A current owner sees the same response for a local pending invitation, a missing identifier, an invitation that already reached a terminal state, or an identifier owned by another workspace. The database state is different only when the exact open row belongs to the selected tenant. Authentication and authorization remain distinct. Anonymous is unauthorized, while a member, inactive owner, stale membership version or stale identity stamp is forbidden. Unresolved provider right contention returns conflict. There is no successful response payload that could leak recipient or invitation details. 3 convenient shortcuts weaken the slice. Cancelling by raw code makes an administration request carry the acceptance secret through browser history, access logs and tracing systems. Cancelling by recipient address avoids the secret but can target the wrong generation. After expiry and replacement, a delayed command may close the new invitation. Hard deleting the row appears tidy, yet it discards who issued the capability, when it ended, and whether later requests were stale. The safe command uses the stable non-secret identifier, derives tenant scope from trusted context, and closes the row. Another subtle shortcut is checking closed at in application memory and saving without a concurrency token. Two callers can both believe they won. The existing version property must participate in the update so cancellation and acceptance cannot both commit from the same starting state. Provider-backed integration tests exercise the real identity endpoints, tenant-owner handler, EF core store and relational concurrency token. The main proof issues a code, cancels by identifier, then attempts acceptance as the bound recipient. Acceptance returns the existing generic bad request, accepted at remains null, and no tenant membership or selected tenant change appears. Repeating delete still returns no content and does not advance version again. A member, stale membership version and stale identity stamp receive forbidden with the invitation still open. An owner selected in another workspace receives the same safe no content but cannot close the foreign row. A different current owner in the same workspace may cancel without becoming the historical issuer. Parallel HTTP requests leave one terminal state, and a deterministic two-context test proves EF core rejects the stale version update. We added owner-controlled cancellation without asking the owner endpoint to handle the bearer secret. Issuance exposes a stable non-secret management identifier once the row is created. Delete accepts only that identifier, while selected tenant, user, identity stamp and membership version come from server-issued state. The store revalidates live ownership, scopes the row by identifier plus tenant, and calls close instead of deleting history. No content makes retries and terminal rows safe, while unauthorized and forbidden still communicate authority failures. Most importantly, cancellation and acceptance update the same version concurrency token, so they cannot both win. Cancellation committed first makes the old code permanently unusable. Cancellation is not membership revocation. If acceptance already won, the accepted membership remains. Next, we can list pending invitations for the selected workspace without exposing code hash, raw codes, closed history or another tenant's recipients.